In August, I released a video called Every State That Had Not Held a NASCAR Cup Series Race. In this video, I talked about the states in the United States that have not held a Cup Series race. The purpose of that video was to obviously talk about the states that have never hosted a Cup Series race. But today, I want to highlight states that have only had the Cup Series at 1 or 2 tracks. So today, we will go over part 1 of 10 obscure NASCAR Cup Series tracks. The first track we will discuss is the Portland Speedway in Portland, Oregon, not to be confused with the Portland International Raceway. Oddly enough though, Portland Speedway was located only 6 minutes away from the Portland International Speedway. Anyways, Portland Speedway was built and opened in 1924. It opened as a 5/8 mile clay oval. The track held midget cars, sprint cars, and other types of racing. In 1946, the track became a half-mile paved oval track. NASCAR sanctioning officially came to the track in 1984. Between 1956 and 2000, the then NASCAR Winston West Series had a total of 56 races at the track. The NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series would also come to the track from 1995 to 1998 and held 4 races between that time span. The NASCAR Cup Series also came to Portland Speedway for a total of 7 races between the 1956 and 1957 season. The Cup Series held 4 races at the track in 1956 and 3 races at the track in 1957. The last race at the paved oval track would be held on July 30th, 2000, and the track would be converted to a dirt track. The World of Outlaw sprint cars would hold races there in 2000 and 2001. Portland Speedway would ultimately shut down for good after 2001. The racetrack was left abandoned for around a decade until an Old Dominion freight line facility was built on the old property. Our next track is Ona Speedway in Ona, West Virginia. The track opened in 1963 as the West Virginia International Speedway. The track is a 0.437 mile short track. The track would immediately bring the NASCAR Cup Series to the track in 1963 and 1964. However, in the 1964 race of the track, pieces of the track started to come up out of the racetrack. This led to a lot of complaints from the drivers. This and other issues led the track to not be featured on the 1965 Cup schedule. A 1.3 mile Superspeedway and a football field were also planned to be built on the facility, but that would never happen as plans for that fell through. The track was renamed to International Raceway Park in 1970, and the NASCAR Cup Series would return to the track in 1970 and 1971 for a pair of races. The track would be taken off the schedule ahead of the 1972 Cup Series schedule, as NASCAR would cut back on the amount of races on the Cup Series schedule to only 31 races. The track would continue to operate until 1976 due to financial issues after NASCAR left the track. The track would be left dormant, but an airport was built adjacent to the facility in 1984. The racetrack would eventually receive a repave in 1995 and would be reopened by a guy by the name of Donnie Chapman. Weekly races would continue to be held at the track throughout the end of the 1990s. Fast forward to the modern day, the track is still having racing events, and the track recently received a repave in 2025. Next up is the Memphis-Arkansas Speedway, located in Lehigh, Arkansas. This track was located 20 minutes away from Memphis, Tennessee. This track was constructed in 1954. This track was a 1.5 mile dirt track, making it the biggest dirt track to ever be built, and the racetrack had a capacity of 12,000 people. The NASCAR Cup Series would hold 4 races at the track from 1954 to 1957. Unfortunately, the 1956 race was marred by 2 fatal wrecks. On June 9, 1956, during a qualifying session for the race, driver Clint Micheal would tumble his car over a guardrail and into a lake that was 50 feet below the embankment. Micheal would not survive his injuries. The next day, during the race on June 10, 1956, on the 39th lap of the race, driver Cotton Pretty sideswiped another vehicle and his car would be sent into a series of nasty barrels. In the middle of all this, caught and Pretty was ejected and thrown from his car. Pretty suffered multiple fractures from this accident, and he was pronounced dead about an hour after the wreck in a West Memphis-Arkansas hospital. Despite this tragedy, NASCAR continued the race, and driver Ralph Moody would end up winning the race. This didn't stop NASCAR from coming back to the facility in 1957 for one final race, where driver Marvin Panch won the final Cup Series race in Arkansas. Amongst all this, though, soon after the track opened, the owners ran out of money and the track became unmanageable because of its dirt surface. The track would be shut down in 1957 and would be sold to a local farmer by the name of Clayton Eubanks Sr. Clayton would use the property for what else than farming. Today, the whole layout of the track is still intact, but it is a grim reminder of what has happened at the facility. Next up is NASCAR's only stop in the state of Louisiana, and this was held at the Louisiana Fairgrounds in 1953. This track was located in Shreveport, Louisiana, where the Louisiana State Fair is held annually. This track opened in the 1870s as a site for horse racing. Motorsports did not take place at the facility until 1910. In 1938, the track was made into a half-mile track instead of a mile track in length. NASCAR would race at the track in 1953. NASCAR Hall of Famer Lee Petty would win the race, and this would be the only time NASCAR would ever visit the state of Louisiana. After this, in 1960, the track became paved, and the track would continue to have racing until at least 1969. In 1980, the Fair Board decided to shut down the track, leaving a piece of NASCAR history gone forever. Our next entry takes us to the state of Nebraska. In 1953, NASCAR would have its only race in Nebraska. NASCAR would race at the Lincoln State Fairgrounds in the smaller town of North Platte, which is located in western Nebraska. The track was a half-mile dirt track, and this race was only 200 laps long. Herb Thomas led 199 laps, only to be beat by Dick Rathman on the final lap by 6 feet. Now this is one of the biggest choke jobs I have ever heard in the history of NASCAR. NASCAR would never return to Nebraska. However, the Lincoln State Fairgrounds still exists to this very day. The track was renamed to the Lincoln County Raceway and holds sprint cars, Mod Lights, and dwarf car racing at the track. Our next track takes us to the state of Maine to the Oxford Speedway. This track opened in 1950 as a 3/8 mile racetrack. This track saw the NASCAR Cup Series come to the track from 1966 to 1968. During this time, Bobby Allison won in 1966 and 1967, and the King, Richard Petty, won in 1968. The NASCAR Xfinity Series also went to the track starting in 1986 to 1988, and then from 1990 to 1991. Chuck Brown, Jamie Abu, Dick McCabe, and Ricky Craven all won races in the NASCAR Xfinity Series when they headed to Oxford Plains. The NASCAR North Tour Series and the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour Series also went to Oxford Plains in the 1980s and the 1990s. The NASCAR K&N Pro East Series also raced at Oxford Plains Speedway from 1987 to 1992 and had a combined total of 33 races at the track during that time span. The series would then come back for one more race at the Oxford Plains Speedway in 2005. The track also featured the ACT Late Model Tour Series at the facility every year from 2006 to 2021, except in 2017. Oxford Plains Speedway also hosts sport truck races, rebel races, outlaws, streetcar races, and even figure 8 races. Oxford Plains Speedway still exists to this day and shows no sign of stopping anytime soon. And that was part 1 of 10 obscure NASCAR tracks. Part 2 will be coming out soon. But let me know what you liked about the video. And as always, thanks for watching and have a good rest of your day.